Hey guys, tonight we're heading into the sun-baked hills of Ethiopia, where coffee isn't just something you grab on your way to work. It's a sacred, smoky ritual that stretches across centuries, continents, and ceramic cups no bigger than a shot glass. You arrive in a village just before dusk, where the air smells like dust, wood smoke, and something slightly sweet, almost like burnt sugar, but earthier. There's no Starbucks sign, no cold foam, and you definitely can't order anything with oat milk. Instead, you're stepping into the world of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony, a delicate, deliberate dance of fire, water, beans, and waiting. You probably won't survive this if you're the type who microwaves day-old coffee and calls it breakfast. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where everyone's listening from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge up a dusty path, the hem of your shirt sticking faintly to your back. Somewhere ahead, the gentle clinking of ceramic cups draws you like a lullaby. You round the corner of a mud brick wall and step into a courtyard, not large but lovingly swept, framed by woven mats, and a low acacia tree. In the center, a young woman crouches over a blackened charcoal stove. She doesn't look up, not yet. Her hands are busy stirring a pan of green, unroasted coffee beans. The scent hasn't quite hit full bloom yet, but something in the air is stirring. You take a seat on a low wooden stool offered by a passing uncle type with a smile that says, "You're here now. Don't rush it." A child walks by chewing sugar cane, his face streaked with ash and sunshine. Somewhere in the distance, a goat complains dramatically. You're not in a museum. You're not even in a performance. You're in a moment that's been lived 1,000 times before you and will be lived 1,000 times after. The woman at the fire is the Buna Tetu, or coffee hostess. That role, respected, central, and always female, is passed down like a secret recipe. She doesn't speak at first. The sound of the beans dancing against the pan is the only music. It's a soft, rhythmic hush, like small stones in a rattle. Each stir, each tilt of the pan releases a little more fragrance, building towards something that isn't quite here yet. Here's your first mainstream history fact. Coffee, or more accurately the Coffea arabica plant, is widely accepted to have originated in the Ethiopian highlands. Most scholars agree that the Oromo people were likely among the first to consume the beans, though they may have chewed them with fat instead of brewing them. Now here's the quirky bit. There's a goat involved. You've probably heard the legend of Kaldi, the 9th century goat herder whose animals got suspiciously hyper after munching red berries from a particular tree. According to the tale, Kaldi brought the beans to a local monastery, where a monk, ever the fun police, threw them into the fire. The aroma naturally was heavenly. The monks decided to try boiling the beans, and just like that, caffeine entered the chat. Historians still argue whether Kaldi ever existed or if this charming story was just a retroactive commercial for the world's favorite stimulant. But the Ethiopian coffee ceremony? That's real. Still practiced. Still powerful. Still 1,000 tiny choices made with patience. Back in the courtyard, the beans begin to darken. They jump higher in the pan now, glistening with oils. The hostess leans in, eyes half-lidded, stirring with the kind of focus usually reserved for heart surgery or TikTok dance tutorials. You're surprised how quiet everything has become. The clatter of life has slowed, paused even, as if the ceremony casts a radius of calm. A slight wind nudges the smoke sideways, and the first true smell of roasted coffee hits you. Deep, earthy, almost chocolatey, but with something darker underneath. It's not the nose-scorching scent of burnt espresso. It's layered, alive, and it makes you wonder why you ever settled for that cold office brew that tastes like regret. The roasting ends in a soft final flourish. She removes the pan from the flame and waves it gently so the beans cool evenly. If she notices you watching, she doesn't say anything, but you get the sense she knows, that she's showing you something old, something inherited. You might wonder, why roast the beans right there, instead of using pre-roasted coffee like everywhere else on Earth? Well, part of it is freshness, but part of it is spiritual. The ceremony is about presence. You don't rush it. You don't automate it. You live in it. Just then a neighbor arrives with a shy nod. Then another. They sit quietly. No one's talking yet. The ritual hasn't given them permission. It's like entering a theater before the play begins. You know the story's coming, but you respect the silence before the first line. And right now you're in that hush, in the pause, in the ember glow edge of a tradition older than most written languages. You might feel a little awkward. That's okay. Buna's ceremonies aren't really about you. They're about the we, the community, the shared pause in the noise of life. But even so, you belong now. You're in the circle, and that aroma drifting from the beans? It's wrapping around you like a lullaby made of smoke and soil. And that's only the beginning. The fire crackles softly now, reduced to a slow, glowing pulse. The beans, freshly roasted, rest in their wide metal pan like tiny bronze jewels, whispering heat into the air. The hostess finally glances your way. It's not a look that demands anything. It's a quiet acknowledgement. You've made it through the first part. Not everyone does. Some tap out early, muttering something about needing Wi-Fi. You stay seated. She rises slowly, her dress, often a traditional white Habesha chemise, though tonight it's faded lilac with a bit of embroidery, brushing the floor. In her hands, she holds the jabina, a sleek, gourd-shaped clay coffee pot with a thin neck and wide belly. It's black from use and fire-slicked like an old violin. The kind of object museums label with plaques, but here, it's just a tool, warm and familiar. There's a rhythm to everything she does, but it's never hurried. First, she scoops water from a clay jug. Then she gently places the jabena directly onto the coal bed, balanced without haste. Water begins to warm inside, barely audible under the courtyard's gentle quiet. You can hear birds settling down in the nearby trees. A breeze rustles the straw roof of a goat shelter, and softly, you hear the beans again, this time being poured into a wooden mortar. Here's a fun mainstream historical fact to stir into the pot while she begins grinding. Coffee was introduced to the Arabian Peninsula via Ethiopia, specifically through the port city of Mocha in Yemen. By the 15th century, it was being consumed in Sufi monasteries to aid in night prayers. So yes, your local Cafe Mocha owes a debt to both spiritual insomnia and ancient trade routes. But you're not in a monastery. You're in the courtyard, and the hostess now holds a long wooden pestle. With deliberate grace, she starts to grind. Thump, thump, thump. Sound is soft but insistent, like the heartbeat of a living place. Each hit sends a shiver through the wooden mortar. The beans crack, then crumble, releasing their last reserves of oil and aroma. It's mesmerizing, almost trance-inducing. You realize you've been staring for maybe too long, your mind melting into the rhythm. The child with the sugar cane is back, now tracing pictures in the dirt with his toes. You wonder what he sees. Does he even register how ancient this act is? Probably not. To him, it's just what happens every day. But to you, fresh from a world of drive-thrus and coffee pods, this is an echo of something older. Much older. Now for your quirky tidbit, in some rural parts of Ethiopia, butter is occasionally added to coffee during ceremonies, especially in the south. Yes, you heard that right. Actual churned butter. It gives the brew a thicker, more nourishing quality. Think of it as an ancient relative of that trendy, bulletproof coffee that tech bros swear by, but without the TED Talk energy. The hostess finishes grinding, and now the air is thick with scent. Roast, wood smoke, something nutty. She uses a funnel made from dried grass to guide the grounds into the warming jabina. No filters, no paper sleeves, just hot water and fresh grounds, mingling over flame. Historians still argue whether the original preparation method of coffee was boiled like this or closer to today's filter styles. Some point to Ottoman Turkish traditions, others to early Yemeni brews. But in this moment, none of that really matters. What matters is that you're here watching something that is both performance and prayer. The coffee begins to boil, slowly at first. Bubbles rise, then collapse. The hostess lifts the pot, swirling it gently, letting the brew settle, then returns it to the heat. She repeats this dance a few times. Lift, swirl, wait. Each movement feels ancient, like choreography passed down through generations without ever being written down. You realize that you haven't spoken in a while. Neither has anyone else. There's a reverence to this stage of the ceremony. Not solemn, but definitely sacred. Then just as you begin to wonder if your legs will fall asleep from the low stool, she removes the jabina and places it gently on a folded cloth. The bubbling stops. The scent deepens. And then incense. From somewhere beneath the bench, she pulls out a small bowl and sprinkles frankincense onto the same coals that just cooked your coffee. The resin melts instantly, sending up curling tendrils of white smoke. It doesn't just smell good, it shifts the air. You feel like you're inside something now, a container of time, a pause made solid. The smoke wraps around you and suddenly you're not just a guest. You're part of a ritual. The first of many cups will be poured soon. But for now, this is the prelude, the slow inhale before the sip. You close your eyes for a second, not to sleep, but to feel it better. The thump of the pestle still echoes faintly. The frankincense hovers. The jebena steams quietly, patient and unbothered. No one is in a hurry. No one is checking a phone. And for the first time in a long while, neither are you. The moment the coffee is ready to be poured feels like the hush before a violin's first note. Quiet, but charged with expectation. You sense it coming. Not from any clock, mind you. There are no alarms, no digital timers. But the air changes. That subtle cue, known only to the hostess and perhaps the breeze itself, tells everyone the brew is ready. She moves slowly, gracefully, lifting the jabina with both hands. The handleless pot is warm, hot, really, and she uses a folded cloth to cradle its base as she pours. But she doesn't rush. The neck of the jabana is long and curved, and it takes skill to pour from such a shape. The stream of coffee is thin, unwavering, and expertly aimed. She fills the first tiny cup. It's called a Sinai. No handle, no design, just a simple white vessel the size of a thimble. The dark liquid inside it gleams like polished wood under moonlight. You watch her go through a quiet ritual. Pour, fill, set down. Then again. Each cup is filled from a slow, arcing stream without spilling a drop. That's not just aesthetics, it's tradition. Coffee poured with haste is considered sloppy, even disrespectful. Every movement is a gesture of hospitality. You shift slightly on your low stool, your knees crack, but quietly. You're still trying to get used to the idea that nothing here is done quickly, and that's okay. Here's your mainstream historical nugget. The Ethiopian coffee ceremony isn't just a morning ritual. It's performed up to 3 times a day in many households, especially in rural areas. Morning, afternoon, and evening. Yes, even if you're already wired from the first round. In Ethiopia, the ceremony isn't just about the beverage. It's about creating space to connect, to be present, and sometimes just to exhale. Now comes the part you've been waiting for. She hands you a cup. It's warm. No sugar, no milk, just coffee. Strong, smoky, and somehow smooth despite its power. You take a sip. It's darker than you're used to, but softer too. It doesn't smack you with bitterness. It glides in like velvet, then lingers, like a memory trying to decide whether it wants to stay. She watches you take that first sip, doesn't say a word, just watches and smiles. Not approval necessarily, just acknowledgement. You've crossed the threshold. The first round is called a bowl. It's the strongest and often the most formal. It's the round of respect, the one where elders speak and younger folks listen, where guests are welcomed and intentions are read between the lines of conversation. But conversation hasn't started just yet, not in earnest. Now for your quirky detail, sometimes during the first round, a few drops are poured onto the ground, an offering to the spirits or ancestors. Not everywhere, not always, but often enough that you should be careful where you put your feet. Historians still argue whether the 3-round structure of the Buna ceremony has roots in pre-Christian or pre-Islamic ritual traditions, or whether it's simply a cultural evolution rooted in hospitality. Either way, it's more than just a coffee break. It's layered, and the more you watch, the more you see how each part serves a role. The hostess begins to pour again. The second Sinai cup goes to the elder seated across from you, then one to the neighbor with dust on his cuffs, then the giggling woman with the toddler in her lap. No one drinks alone here. Even the small child gets a cup, but it's filled with warm milk, a gesture, an inclusion. You take another sip. It's deeper now, not in flavor. It's the same brew, but in meaning. you start to understand why this ritual persists, not because of caffeine, not even because of taste, but because it makes everyone stop. The world for a moment shrinks down to this circle of warm cups and frankincense smoke. Someone coughs gently. Another adjusts his scarf. Then slowly the conversation begins. Just whispers at first. Something about a cousin's new job in the city, a bit of teasing over a neighbor's runaway goat. The words curl up around the coffee cups, like steam. You listen, not understanding every word, but catching the rhythm, the way voices rise and fall, the laughter that ripples out in gentle waves. Here the first round of coffee isn't the end, it's the invitation. You glance around and notice that there are no clocks. No one has looked at their phone. You'd swear time has slowed down, or maybe it's just stretched to fit this moment more generously. And it's not just the people who feel it, even the setting responds. The fire has burned down to a glowing bed of coals. The incense is almost spent, its final wisps curling toward a sky slowly sliding into night. The air cools just a little. A rooster crows, too early for morning, too late for noon. A child giggles in her sleep, curled against her grandmother's side. The hostess smiles again, this time knowingly. She pours another cup, her movements just as precise, just as slow. You realize you haven't said a word in half an hour, and you're not sure you want to. You take another sip, and everything softens. The soft clinking of empty cups begins to fill the air. One by one, guests cradle their sinais with both hands. Some out of custom, others because the tiny porcelain warms cold fingers. Around you, the conversation starts to pick up in quiet hums, like birdsong at dawn. Not urgent, not loud, just naturally blooming. But the hostess? She isn't done, not even close. With practiced ease, she lifts the jabina and disappears inside the low house nearby, vanishing like a magician behind a curtain of linen. You hear water splashing faintly, a kettle refilling, the scrape of something metal on clay. It's time for the second round of the ceremony, Tona. While you wait, you study the tools left behind. The mortar and pestle still sit slightly ajar, and beside them a faded woven tray holding cracked cardamom pods and a few stray coffee grounds. You brush one with your thumb, fine like beach sand and still fragrant. It smells less like Starbucks and more like firewood, time, and patience. From inside the house comes a soft rhythmic sound, scrape, 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 followed by a burst of laughter. Someone said something funny, probably about you, don't worry. It's almost always affectionate. Here's a solid historical fact to chew on while the jabina heats again. Ethiopia is the only African country that has never been colonized. Well, technically. Italy tried in the late 19th century and again under Mussolini, but was never able to fully control the land or crush its traditions. And one of the quiet, symbolic victories of Ethiopian identity? The coffee ceremony. Even during occupation, this ritual remained defiantly untouched, practiced in homes like a whisper of resistance. Now, for your quirky cultural tidbit, in some families, younger members are taught to roast and grind beans as a coming-of-age skill, sort of like learning to drive, but slower and with fewer parking tickets. A teenager's first solo ceremony might even be a mini-event, full of giggles and way too much smoke. Historians still argue whether the rhythmic grinding of beans has roots in ancient agricultural rituals or spiritual chant rhythms. Some say it mimics the pace of old fieldwork songs. Others insist it's coincidence. But sitting here, listening to that steady scrape, it's hard not to imagine a connection between body, labor, and land. The hostess returns, carrying the jabina once more, refilled, reheated, and heavier with the second infusion. Unlike Western-style drip coffee, where new grounds mean new coffee, the Ethiopian tradition is to reuse the same batch for all 3 rounds. The strength fades with each pour, but the meaning doesn't. She sets the pot down and begins to pour again, her wrist arching slightly higher now. The stream of coffee is thinner, weaker, but it still smells divine, like roasted earth and dry leaves. She works clockwise, another unspoken rule, and refills every cup one by one. You sip, this cup is different. Not bad, just gentler. The sharp edge of the first round is gone, replaced by something mellow, rounder, like the memory of a taste rather than the taste itself. This is Tona, the round of reflection, of open chatter, of comfortable silences. Here, people loosen a bit more. You'll hear children ask questions, couples steal soft glances, and elders crack jokes that carry the weight of half a lifetime. Next to you, the sugarcane kid is back. Only now he's fallen asleep on his mother's lap. She balances her cup expertly with one hand while gently stroking his hair with the other. A chicken struts by like it owns the courtyard. No one flinches. You lean back just a little, legs stretched out carefully. The edge of your stool creaks, but you're too drowsy to care. There's something deeply satisfying about being in a space where time moves in spirals instead of straight lines. The woman across from you begins telling a story, half whispered, half sung. You don't catch every word, but the cadences pull you in. It's about a lost cow, a clever girl, and a hyena who might have been a prince. You're not entirely sure what the moral is, but the others laugh. And you laugh too, because why not? And now, the open secret of Tona. This is the round where truth comes out, where grievances can be aired, confessions shared, or hearts mended. In many rural communities, people say things over the second cup that they couldn't say over the first. Not because they're braver, but because they're softer. The caffeine has started to fade, the fire's lower, the air's thicker. It's harder to lie in such stillness. You start to wonder how many disagreements in your own life might have gone differently if they'd happened over Tona instead of during a group text or a 3-minute phone call while parallel parking. A grandmother rises slowly, brushing off her skirt. She takes her empty cup to the hostess, not out of duty, but out of thanks. The gesture is small but intimate. You feel it in your chest. You glance at your cup, almost empty. No one pushes for refills. No one rushes to clean up. They just sit, together. The fire, the jabina, the people, the whole thing breathes like an organism made of memory and habit. You yawn accidentally. The hostess notices. She laughs, not unkindly, and gestures toward the jabina. Still one more round to go. You nod, cup still in hand, and close your eyes just for a moment. And when you open them, the smoke is dancing again. The air grows cooler as the evening deepens. Shadows stretch long across the courtyard, and the last gold sliver of sunlight clings stubbornly to the edge of a clay wall before surrendering to dusk. You hear it before you see it, the whisper of water returning to a boil. The third round of coffee is about to begin. You sit straighter without meaning to, your back sensing the subtle shift in the ritual's energy. You've crossed from the formal to the familiar, and now you approach the final phase, the third pour, known as baraka, which means blessing. The hostess lifts the jabina again, but this time there's a certain weight to her movement, not heaviness, just finality. This is the round that closes the circle, the last sip before everyone melts back into the folds of regular life. She pours without ceremony now, but still with care. The stream is thinner, the color of the brew paler. What you receive in your Sinai is no longer a hit of caffeine. It's more like an echo, a warm, diluted memory of the first cup. But that's the point. Baraka isn't about strength, it's about presence, about lingering, about saying, we're still here, we're still together. You take your sip, it's gentle, still warm, still complex in its way, like rainwater on stone or smoke from a candle long blown out. Let's slip in your historical anchor. According to many scholars, the 3 rounds of the Ethiopian coffee ceremony are said to represent transformation, from life to sharing to spiritual connection. The first awakens the body, the second opens the heart, and the third stills the soul. But not everyone agrees. Historians still argue whether this triad was formalized from ancient symbolic systems, maybe linked to Orthodox Christian rites or older animist customs, or if it's just a practical way of reusing the same batch of grounds 3 times. But in practice, intention seems to matter more than origin. Here's your quirky nugget. In some families, it's common for someone to accidentally spill a drop during baraka. It's a small superstition, thought to carry a wish or blessing to the spirits or sky. If the hostess doesn't flinch when it happens, that's a good sign. She trusts that some things are meant to fall where they may. Your hostess tonight doesn't spill a thing. She's precise to the end. Around you, the conversation has softened. No more debates about goats. No more teasing over who ate the last injera. Just murmurs. A lull. The kind of silence that says, we've said what needs to be said. Someone begins humming, an old tune, maybe a lullaby. It blends with the creaking of a nearby chair, the hiss of the fire cooling down, and the chirp of night insects awakening. You look up at the sky, it's gone velvet. Stars begin to prick their way through the blue-black like tiny needle holes in fabric. The moon rises with no urgency, casting silver onto the stone floor at your feet. The children, who were buzzing earlier, are now draped over laps or curled in baskets with woven blankets. One of them clutches a sugarcane stub like a teddy bear. You sip again. You're not entirely sure how many cups you've had. The strength has faded, yes, but the comfort has deepened. A neighbor leans over and asks where you're from. You say it softly. He nods, smiles. No more questions. Just a sharing of place, of presence. In Buna, conversation doesn't always demand answers. This is the power of the third round. It makes room for being, not doing. For silence that isn't awkward. For stillness that isn't empty. The hostess finishes pouring. She lets the jabina rest beside the dying coals, the clay cooling now. Its service done for the night. You watch her hands for a moment. Steady, graceful, soot-smudged. You wonder how many times she's done this. 10? 100? 1,000? And how many of those times were for guests like you? Probably very few. This isn't a tourist ritual. It wasn't invented for Instagram. This is something kept, protected, something passed from grandmother to mother to daughter, without manuals or measuring spoons, just memory and rhythm and trust. You drain the last sip. The taste is faint, but it lingers. That's what Baraka is for. It's not to jolt or impress. It's the closing note, the gentle descent of a plane after a long, slow flight through human connection. Someone stands, another stretches. Slowly the circle dissolves. Not with rush, but with the kind of ease you'd find in old trees bending in the wind. Unbothered, knowing they'll gather again. You stay a moment longer. The hostess glances your way again, not smiling, not nodding, just seeing you. And in that glance, you realize something odd. You don't feel like a guest anymore. You feel like someone who's been. By now, the courtyard has settled into a hush that feels thicker than silence. It's not empty. It's full of things unsaid. The kind of quiet that comes only after time is well spent, and people have nothing left to prove. But you're still here, and so is she. The hostess gathers the used cups, one by one, rinsing them in a small tin basin just outside the circle. Not hurried, not distracted. Even cleanup is deliberate. Each cup clinks against the others like wind chimes made of memory. A soft sound that settles somewhere deep in your ribs. You start to notice something else now. The texture of the cups. The faint scratches on their sides, the tiny chips along the edges. These aren't new. These are survivors of 1,000 ceremonies. Each blemish a story. Each crack a joke retold. They've seen things. Just like the people who hold them. You shift slightly in your seat again. The woven mat under your feet rustles, and it's only then that you realize your legs are comfortably numb. Not from pain, but from stillness. How often do you sit without fidgeting for over an hour back home? Let's throw in your historical fact for the day. Ethiopia remains one of the few countries in the world where coffee is consumed almost entirely in its unprocessed, whole bean form. No pods, no instant powder. Roasting, grinding, boiling, done on the spot. Not just for taste, but for control, for connection. In urban cafes, sure, espresso machines exist. But even in cities like Addis Ababa, many families still begin the day with their own Buna ceremony. Now for your offbeat nugget. In some regions, guests are expected to fake a polite refusal before accepting the first cup. A performative hesitation, almost theatrical. Not because they don't want it, but to show humility. It's a dance of respect. You offer, they decline. You insist, they accept. It's like cultural coffee foreplay. Historians still argue whether this ritualized refusal evolved from Highland hospitality codes or was imported through trade routes from Arab customs. Either way, it's a reminder that in some parts of the world, manners mean more than speed. The incense returns, just a small piece of frankincense this time, tossed onto the last embers like a sigh. The scent curls up again, less aggressive now, almost sleepy. You inhale deeply. You don't mean to, but it feels like your body knows it needs this breath. And now for the first time all night, people start to drift. Not leave, but loosen. A man stretches his arms overhead and yawns. A toddler is bundled onto a grandmother's back with a soft cloth sling. Someone gathers the sugar cane stubs and tosses them into the fire, where they crackle for a moment like fireworks pretending to be wood. The ceremony is over, but the evening isn't. There's something about the stillness afterward that clings to you, like the final notes of a lullaby that won't quite stop ringing in your ears. And here's where it hits you. This wasn't just about the coffee. Yes, it was rich and strong and beautifully prepared, but the real gift was the interruption. This was a moment paused, intentionally, communally. In a world where most rituals are rushed, digitized, or skipped entirely, the Buna ceremony insists on staying slow. And in that slowness, you found something startling. Presence. Real, unfiltered presence. You glance around again. The fire has nearly died. The stars are fully out. The night is beginning its shift in earnest. And for once, you're not checking the time. Not because you forgot, but because it stopped mattering. The hostess folds the cloth beneath the jabina, setting it aside like a beloved instrument after a long concert. Her hands are steady, her eyes calm. You think of how many times she's done this. How many generations of women have stood beside fires like this one, grounding their families, their neighbors, their guests, in cups no bigger than a mouthful. She doesn't say goodbye. No one really does. They just nod, or smile, or gather their shawls and slip into the night like they were never here. You're not ready to move yet, so you stay seated, hands resting loosely on your knees, breathing in the last curl of frankincense like it's some kind of spell. And for a moment, you imagine bringing this home. Not the beans, not the jabina, but the pause, the refusal to rush, the gentle grace of offering something simple and expecting nothing more than a moment in return. You take that last breath, the one that feels like a goodbye and a thank you all at once, and maybe, just maybe, a beginning. You rise slowly, stretching limbs that have almost forgotten movement. The night wraps around your shoulders like a soft shawl, and for a moment you just stand there, absorbing it all. The fire, now a bed of glowing red memory, fades into the background as you follow the murmurs of conversation drifting down the alley. A few of the neighbors are still nearby, chatting in low tones, their sinews balanced expertly in their palms. One man waves you over, not with insistence but with warmth. You step closer, and without needing to ask, another cup appears in your hand. It's probably just warm water now, but the gesture matters more than the content. Tonight's not over, because what comes after the ceremony is often just as telling. You settle near them, the group now huddled loosely around a small clay brazier, still smoldering with coals. Someone throws in a pinch of dried grass and lets the smoke rise lazily into the indigo sky. They talk, not loudly, not even all at once. But there's an ease to it. Topics float like leaves on a calm stream. Someone's cousin just bought a taxi in the city. A local girl might be getting engaged to a teacher from the next village. A grandmother had a dream that she thinks means rain is coming, though no one seems to agree on whether it's literal or metaphorical. You listen. And here's what you learn very quickly. The coffee ceremony is a Trojan horse for conversation. The ritual creates a sacred pause. But what it contains is everyday life. Gossip, memory, flirtation, news, grievances dressed up as jokes. In Ethiopia, the Buna circle is where the social pulse is taken and sometimes lightly massaged back to health. Mainstream fact time. In many Ethiopian communities, decisions aren't made in government buildings or boardrooms, but over coffee. Elders settle disputes during ceremonies. Family matters are negotiated sip by sip. Even major social shifts, like how to divide land or settle inheritance, might begin with, let's sit for Buna. Quirky detail? Some ceremonies include not one but 3 fires. One to roast the beans, one to boil the coffee, and one just for the incense because scent, like sound, is a layer of presence. It's said that when the frankincense swirls just right, it signals that the ancestors are near, leaning close, maybe even listening in. Historians still argue whether the conversational nature of the ceremony evolved as a survival mechanism during periods of conflict, when public gatherings were watched, but private homes were sacred. Some suggest it goes further back, to when community cohesion meant survival itself. Either way, the result is this: A coffee ceremony isn't complete without talk. One man leans in, his elbow brushing yours. He tells a story about a relative who tried to open a cafe in Italy and refused to serve anything other than Ethiopian roast. No espresso, no cappuccino, only Jabana style. It lasted 4 months. Everyone chuckles softly. Another older woman recalls her first ceremony as hostess. She was 14, so nervous she dropped the jabina, and it cracked right in half. The ancestors didn't show up that day, she jokes. They were embarrassed. Everyone laughs. Even the stars seem to shimmer more brightly. It strikes you, gently but firmly, that the coffee is just the invitation. What happens during is what matters. And what happens is this: humans being human. Stories told, eyes met, laughter shared, grief acknowledged without needing a formal eulogy. There's something disarming about sipping from the same style of cup as everyone else. There are no tall or grand or venti hierarchies here. Everyone drinks from the same equal vessel. You begin to see how the design of the ritual flattens status, allowing for moments of genuine connection. You find yourself talking now, too, not with grand speeches or clever takes, just small things: where you're from, what the city smells like in the rain, how coffee back home comes in paper cups with your name spelled wrong. Someone laughs at that and mimics your name with a wild flourish of vowels. It's all good fun. The group welcomes you not with applause or ceremony, but with belonging. The topics drift. Someone brings up a local myth about a jackal who steals fire and gets turned into a shooting star. Another counters with a folk tale about a clever donkey who outwits a lion. The line between fact and fiction blurs softly in the smoke. A boy throws another twig on the coals. The fire flares, briefly illuminating everyone's faces in amber light. In that moment, you realize something odd.